Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vijay, and I'm an account executive based out of Dallas, Texas. Appreciate you all joining in today's session on the Office 365 Productivity and Collaboration Tool. This session will be led by Alan and Olivia from our strategic partner, Covenant. We will be recording today's session, so feel free to reach out to me, Covenant, or your MAB account executive if you need a copy of the recording. Over to you, Alan.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, as was mentioned, my name is Alan Richardson. I work at Covenant Technology Partners. So just a quick word about us and what we do. We've been around since 2004. We serve primarily the St. Louis area and nearby region. We do have clients across the country, but we're headquartered here in St. Louis. We have as our mission is to help technology leaders, like many of yourselves, implement business solutions. And that's how we look at them. Obviously, technology is a big part of it, but ultimately it's delivering value to your business customers and value that'll be sustained over the long term. We do that with a variety of tools. It's inside the Microsoft ecosystem. So really, if it's got Microsoft in it, if there's a Microsoft license, then we help implement those things. That's the short version of it. Obviously, today we're going to be very focused on Office 365 and how you can use that in some of your collaboration between the teams. That said, I'd ask about you, but there's a lot of you, so we won't do that right up. We probably wouldn't have any time left for anything else. That said, though, if you do have a question, what I'd like to do is ask if you could use the chat window in your Skype session. That'll show up in the conversation window, and I'll try and keep an eye on that, and perhaps Olia, who's our marketing rep here on the call from Covenant, perhaps she can also help jog me here and there if I need to pause and I haven't seen the question. But let's do that because there are 58 and counting participants, and we do have some ground to cover here. So I'd like to just again ask if you do have questions. I'd love to take those, but go ahead and raise your hand in the chat window and let us know how we can help you there. Okay, that said, we'll get on with it. Because it's a large group, I don't want to make too many assumptions about what you know and don't, so we'll just do a very brief, take a very brief look at Office 365 to start with. Let me, actually this is just a quick bullet list of the various things that Covenant does do inside of what we call Modern Workplace. It actually supports a couple of major pillars of Microsoft's organization. But the Office 365 stack, basically, and said most simply, perhaps, is that it's a collection of cloud services. Of course, we have to also note that it comes with, or can come with, depending on your licensing, the desktop software that we all know and love, Microsoft Office. The key to Office 365, again, just keeping this very brief here, is not that any one of its tools are the best tool in the whole wide world at what it does, but that put the tools together and you've got an irresistible proposition here. The connectivity between the Office 365 tools, the integration between those, means that that collection of tools is definitely greater than the sum of its parts. And its ability to connect into the rest of the Microsoft stack, whether that's into Dynamics, ERP, or CRM, and so on, there is a lot of connectivity there. And so tools that we're going to be looking at today, you might be familiar with non-Microsoft versions of those kinds of tools. And it's not really about trying to line, let's say, Teams up against Slack. We'll let you do that on your own time, as much as it is to say that as good as Teams is, what makes it truly special and gives it its advantage is its ability to connect into everything else that you can get from Office 365. none of those tools are one-trick ponies. So we'll be looking at a few of those today, but I want you to keep that in mind, the bigger picture of Office 365. Why use Office 365? To be honest with you, a lot of your employees, if you're not aware of this, are already in the cloud. There's a very famous set of statistics that TechCrunch put out a couple of years ago, some very high numbers in terms of employees that are using cloud services inside of organizations that don't currently support cloud services. Some of them are free. They may be using Slack, they might be using Dropbox, maybe using a variety of things. They may be using some of the consumer Microsoft cloud services. But those services that they're using are not connected either to each other, to their own suite of tools they're using. There's not a lot of connectivity between those. They're not connected to anything internally, that's for sure, or at least we hope not. They're not governed in any way, so whatever information security policies might be in place, for example, they don't cover those tools. Whatever information is making it out into the cloud through those tools is light in the wild. And in the IT teams, in our companies, are not supporting those tools. So what happens when somebody in marketing says, I don't know how to get my files out of this service? Well, I don't know. That's not a service we support. And so again, employees are already in the cloud. What Office 365 brings is these consumer-like services, and that's a very important concept, is that these are easy to use, very portable tools that people get into without big training seminars, without manuals. They're just easy to use. Think Facebook easy. And they're out there using these tools. Well, it's tough to say no to people using tools that are that easy and instead encumbering them with aging IT systems that usability wasn't really a word when they were invented. So instead, Microsoft Office 365 presents the same kinds of tools with the same kinds of ease of use that are available, yes, on a desktop, but yes, on the phone and on the tablet, etc. as well. But they come with, Office 365 services and tools come with security and governance and interconnectivity. Office 365 then kind of brings together and knits together all the tools that it has, and most importantly, it changes the approach to teamwork. And that's really the focus of what we're going to be talking about today, is the teamwork that's achievable through Office 365. We're going to talk about just a couple of the tools in that space, each of which deserves its own presentation, and we have workshops and things like that around these tools. So I'm going to be cramming stuff in there and still try and leave some room to tackle questions, etc. as we go through it. But what the main aim today is not to do a training session on one of those products, but to highlight what they do and how they make us function differently, hopefully improve collaboration within our teams. Before I get into the two tools, I've got to lay the groundwork. The groundwork, in the case of Office 365, are Office 365 groups. So just a brief word on this, because it's not really what you want to get your hands on and use, but you have to understand how this functions, because everything else makes a lot more sense when you understand groups. Office 365 groups are the architectural foundation for Office 365. They are, think about it like this, and I put this on the slide. It's like an Active Directory group, hence groups, plus a whole bunch of tools that you can make available to the people in that group, whether they're SharePoint sites, email groups, planner boards, Power BI workspaces, Teams, things like that. An Office 365 group, once you create that, you can put people in it and they get access to the same set of tools so they can collaborate within that group. And you can have groups for anything. They can be around a project, they can be around a department, they can be around a topic. but a group will be, as I said before, a membership container that you can attach policies to, and those policies will apply across the tools that you get access to when you're part of that group. Groups are easy to create. They are created from whatever tool you're in. You don't have to go to some sort of Office 365 groups provisioning portal. No, right from in the tool. If I'm in SharePoint, there's a way to create one there. If I'm in Planner, I create one from there. In fact, as we'll look at it today, when I'm in Teams and I create a team, that actually is creating a group. And Microsoft's done a good job of simplifying this for most users. We don't have to worry about Office 365 groups. They're kind of invisible, but they permeate everything that we're doing here. So from a security, from a policy, from a governance perspective, groups are very, very important. And that is that's really behind the scenes, foundational. And one last note on here in terms of membership to any of these tools that are there. Membership to a group will control who can get to what, and your membership of a group can be private. So I just want this for my team and nobody else. It can be public, and that means anybody in the organization can see this and join into this group and the tools that we're using and the content that we're generating. And of course, more recently, Microsoft has added in the ability for us to add folks outside the organization in as guests. And guests can get to the content. They have a reduced set of permissions, but they can participate in a team or a SharePoint site. They can contribute content. They can search. They can do a lot of the things. Of course, they're not administrators and not owners. There's certain things that they cannot do. But they've made it very easy for folks outside your organization to be able to join in. So, for example, it may be that you're working with an outside marketing firm, and you want to share materials with that marketing firm, but you want those materials to reside in-house, not with the marketing firm, and email isn't necessarily the best way of keeping track of all of that. So we're going to create a team or a SharePoint site, and we're going to grant them access to it, and they'll get an invitation in their email. Now they can join the team. They can upload documents, so we can collaborate with external parties. So just an example there. To illustrate the importance of groups across the spectrum, and this is not the whole spectrum, this is not every Office 365 service, but whether it's Teams, Yammer, Outlook, SharePoint, Skype, Planner, Office 365 groups is that underpinning that controls access and policies, etc. It's what knits them together so that my team that's got to work on an initiative has access to all of these tools. We share content across all of those tools together because we're all in the same group. And while we're on this slide, just a couple of things to talk about, because again, today's topic is collaboration, productivity. We're really focusing on how do teams work together. We get a couple of very common questions. Most folks understand a little bit about SharePoint. I'm not going to say much about that. And Outlook, yep, everybody gets Outlook. Planner, we're going to show a little bit of Planner in a minute. Where there's some confusion is around Teams, Yammer, and Skype. And when do I use which one? So I'll just say a brief word about that. Yammer would be, it's been called the corporate Facebook. Microsoft prefers to call it enterprise social for obvious reasons. It's where I can have various topics or focus areas and have conversations around those things. It could be around proposals, it could be around new marketing initiatives, it could be something more recreational, and you can set up all of these topics inside of Yammer, and the organization can use that. They can access their favorite ones on their phone, and so it's a very easy place to communicate and collaborate around certain focus areas. It's typically done on a more broad organizational basis. It can be done on Teams at a team level. I've seen it used for that. Teams, on the other hand, Teams is much more, well, as the name implies, it's team focused. It's not typically used for organization-wide things, and it does incorporate the same kind of conversation threading that Yammer does. I can have conversations inside of Teams, and we're going to show Teams today. But the focus is a lot narrower, and there's a whole lot more capabilities to Teams than just conversations. Skype, most of you are probably familiar with or using Skype already for voice calls, for video calls. In fact, I know you're all using Skype because that's what we're using right now. That is being folded into Teams. So I can go all day now without using the Skype tool. I can do all of my work from within Teams, whether it's one-on-one chats that aren't related to a specific team, whether it's broadcast webinars, or more commonly, whether it's related to a particular team. All those conversations that I used to have in Skype, I can now have in Teams. And Microsoft is obviously moving things across the Teams, and at some point, the Skype for Business client will become either insignificant or obsolete as Teams takes the forefront there. I don't see any questions popping up. If you do have any, we're going to dig in a moment here into a couple of demos of tools for helping your teams collaborate. But if you do have any questions, feel free to go ahead and add them into the chat window. If you're struggling with the chat window, then I'm going to open it up just for a moment here to any questions if you just want to unmute and ask a question. Okay, good. Then we're going to keep rolling. So first up, we're going to look at Planner. Again, a lot of tools we could have picked from for helping your teams collaborate, but we're going to keep it to Planner, and then we're going to move on to Teams, and I hope it'll make sense why we're doing things in that order when we get to Teams. But Microsoft Planner, this is a very straightforward, lightweight way of managing work. You can create a plan. Within that plan, you assign tasks to people. You can share files and chat within the planner. You can, of course, get to it from your desktop, from your phone, from your tablet, and it's very tied into your email. So, and we'll take a look at all of that in a moment. I'm a project manager by trade, and so I come from more from the Microsoft Project and Project Online world when it comes to managing work. And there's an interesting contrast between the two tools. Microsoft Planner isn't trying to be Microsoft Project in any way. We will use Microsoft Project Covenant for managing complex projects with lots of assignments, with dates, with a lot of schedule dependencies, things like that, and we roll all of our project plans up into our portfolio reporting tool in Microsoft Project Online. And that's very helpful for that. We can also do timesheets and other things, very capable, very robust, and somewhat complex. Microsoft Planner is better suited to small efforts that don't have a ton of people, where due dates and deadlines are important, but there's not schedule dependencies, there's not a lot of the complexity that you have to try and bake into a project plan. Planner is good for that, and it follows the more modern idea of drag and drop tiles. Basically, it's a Kanban board. So we're going to take a look at Microsoft Planner. Let me bring that screen across here. And let's get back to Planner. Okay, here we go. So this is Planner. If you have an Office 365 license, chances are you have access to this. If you're not sure how to get to it, in any of your Office 365 apps, the little menu at the top left-hand corner will give you access to all of your apps, including Planner. You also can just type in tasks.office.com. That'll bring you through to this as well. And the first time you come in, if it's new to your organization, there won't be any plans. Obviously, we have a few here ongoing at Covenant. And so what you do when you come in is you would go to New Plan. You'd create a plan, and just give it a name, specify who can have access to it, and there's a few other things that you can do, but it's pretty straightforward. I just want a plan, and these are the people that I want to have access to that plan. Then it'll open up a window that looks like this. So I just created one called the Teams Demo Tasks. That's the name of this planner board. I've added a few members already, but members can be added easily over here. You just start typing in the name. Well, add names of people I actually have here. But I can add members, and I can, as I go through this, assign tasks to those members. But because this is a private team, those members have to be in my site before I can assign tasks to them. So first up, in a plan, I'm just going to make things easy here by adding a task. So here's my task. Enter, and I've added a task. There it is. It's just called Do Something. That's a task, hasn't been assigned to anybody, there's no other information to it. But once a task is created, I can manage that task. I can say what its status is. I can do a number of things to it. We'll build up a little bit around this. But just starting off very simply, I'm going to group by progress. Now this will be somewhat familiar. This is kind of the most basic Kanban board that you can have. I'm going to say this task here, which has not started, it's in the not started bucket here. I'm going to drag it across to the in progress. Now somebody has started on that. At least that's the implication. And then when it's done, I can drag it across to completed. So as I add tasks to this, and I'm going to say, now I'm going to start giving them some dates. This task is due on Friday. I'm going to assign this one to Bruce, and I'm going to give it to a couple of people. And now I'm going to add that task. It's not started yet, but I can say, you know what, actually there's a bit more information I need to provide about this task. You really can't start it till tomorrow, so we're just going to say it starts tomorrow, finishes Friday. Here's some information I'm going to provide about this. I can put that information, if it's short and concise, I might want to show it on the very front of the card, on the tile within the task board. Depending on the task, it might make sense to say these are the steps I want you to follow, and I can put these in here. I can add file attachments, and I can add comments. Now what will happen is when I click send here, is Bruce and Philip, the two guys assigned to this task, are going to get an email. It's going to have this information in it with a link back to this task so that they can come in and update the task. You'll also see that comments are recorded below. So if Bruce comes back in and decides he wants to add a comment, of course this isn't going to come from Bruce. Bruce does come back in and add a comment, you can see that it's being tracked here below. So the great thing about this is the conversation about this task all stays in an area that we can all see it. In fact, if Bruce gets that email and he sees that he was supposed to provide something, he can just click reply to all, at which point his comment would show up in this, just as if he came in and entered a comment. So for those who don't need to come into the planner board, they simply need to provide something back. It can be done through email. They don't even leave their inbox. There's more email integration potential. We're not going to show a whole lot of that today, but you can actually access your planner board from inside of Outlook. You just basically adds it to the left side navigation. It's an Office 365 group, and if you've done groups inside of Outlook, it's very simple. It shows up in the left navigation, and I can see everything that I need to see about this planner inside of Outlook. So for those who are really struggling with getting anything done that isn't in Outlook, this will accommodate that. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. My task now has more stuff. In fact, I'm going to change to show these steps on the card instead. So here's my task. Here's my steps. Well, here's when it's due. Here's who's going to do it. And I'm going to assume they went ahead and started on that one. So you can see that we can build up a whole set of tasks around an initiative. Just keep adding them in as time goes along. And these tasks start stacking up. And of course, again, the assigned to piece is very important because that plugs in the people that need to know about this task and need to report on the task. And for that purpose, you can come in and see who are things assigned to. I can see Alan's got one assigned, Bruce has one, Philip's got one. So you can see very quickly who's doing what. I can actually see just my tasks over here on the left. There's something called My Tasks. And all in one place, I can see all of the tasks assigned to me. As you can tell, I've got more than one of these going on. Other ways of looking at this, assigned to, we looked at progress, we can look at when are things due. We can also look at labels. I'm not going to get into labels, but it's yet another way of organizing the information. You can also see when things are due by going to the schedule. And there's a couple of different ways of looking at schedule. This is the monthly view. It tells you this task is starting tomorrow. It's due by the end of Friday. That's when that is happening. There's other tasks that haven't yet been given start and end dates. Week view will show you that, obviously, just for this week. And you can scroll between the different weeks. So there's a couple of basics there on adding tasks. There's this thing called Planner Hub. I briefly was on it a moment ago. Planner Hub will show you for your favorite plans you've marked as favorite, what's going on. And I can take this this one here that we were just in, and I can say I want to add that one to favorites too. So here's my let me go back to Planner Hub. Didn't mean to go into it. So there are 3 tasks in progress, none that are late yet, and 1 that's been completed. So very quick and easy way to visualize what's happening around these tasks within a team. Much lighter, more lightweight, I should say, than Microsoft Project. Very easy to get it started and to assign tasks. It's got its limitations compared to Project, but it's not trying to be Project. It would be something you would compare more with, let's say, a Trello or something like that. Let's see, there are a few charts within your plan. There are a few additional charts that you can get to here that just show a little bit more of the detail that's going on, how many tasks people have, who's overloaded, that sort of thing. Okay, I'm pausing for breath here and for any questions. I don't see any in the chat window right now, so that's good. But if you do have any questions, either enter them into the chat window, or if that's not working for you, then go ahead and speak up. Okay, Jeff asks a question. When creating a new plan, can you copy from an existing plan, or do you need to start from scratch each time? So out of the box, unfortunately, you have to start from scratch each time. It has been entered into user voice. I've kind of been tracking this one. The desire to be able to copy and paste an existing plan, because then, of course, I could create a template. And I could say, this is what a typical IT project looks like, or a typical marketing campaign looks like. And I've got a new one, so just copy and paste that one. And we would all like to see that. Right now, that's not part of the feature set, but Microsoft, the team has acknowledged it, have said that it's on the roadmap, but hasn't delivered it just yet. So right now, yeah, you have to start from scratch. There is an API behind this that makes it possible to do things like create a new plan from an existing plan, because the API gives access to everything that's in a plan. And we can build those sorts of things with Power Apps. Obviously, Flow connects very well between plans and things outside of Planner. But Power Apps gives us full access to the API and the ability to do things like create a new plan from an existing template. But out of the box, not today. It's a good question, and one that we've asked a few times as well. One thing that's related to that, I will say, is that within a plan, a task like this that has a nice long checklist to it, and it's something that we're going to be doing many times over, you can create a new task from this task by saying copy task. And now I'm going to get the exact same list of things. And if you're building a bit of complexity into your tasks, that can be pretty helpful. So copying tasks, but not plans just yet. Good question. Any other questions about Planner? Okay. So talk about Microsoft Teams, kind of a hot topic these days. Microsoft Teams, this is where we're seeing perhaps the most exciting product development in this area happening right now from Microsoft. They seem intent on making Teams a one-stop shop for collaboration. They're folding in a lot of the other services. Personally, it's starting to feel a bit like Teams is becoming my desktop because I can do pretty much everything that I even like Planner. I can do all of that stuff within Teams. But its main features, the main things Teams is known for, would be chat. I can chat with one-on-one. I can chat with a whole team. It's persistent, which doesn't mean what we mean when we say email is persistent, by which we mean it's unmanageable and it never stops. What we mean by persistent here is that you have a chat conversation within the context of a team, and that chat conversation is preserved for other people that join the team or are on the team, and they want the context. They want to know what's happening around this project. All this stuff is retained, is searchable, and a lot of information is kept and shared for the rest of the team. Now, that doesn't mean that all of the information that happens in chat is that way. Microsoft Teams, as I said before, kind of replaces Skype for Business, or it's in the process of doing so. And so one-to-one chat conversations, things like that, they're outside the context of a team. Those aren't made visible to everybody. Files, we'll take a look at these features, but sharing files within Teams and editing those files within Teams. Search across people and files and chats, all of this has the Graph API under it, so what's going on in my organization, what are people working on and focusing on, whatever I have access to, it's able to surface this stuff through Teams. Meetings, I can schedule meetings that are team-related meetings very quickly and easily, and there's some pretty exciting stuff around how that functions. We'll take a look in a minute. They're customizable. Microsoft Teams, the workspaces themselves are customizable. I can add in additional cloud tools, content feeds, bots. You'll see all this in just a minute. And then, very importantly, and I mentioned this earlier, it's secure. We're talking about something that exists inside of Office 365 that has the HIPAA compliance. It can have NIST compliance if you're in a government data center, etc., multi-factor authentication, integration with Intune for devices, so on and so forth. So Microsoft Teams, just think about it as the collaboration home and probably central unifying point for a lot of the tools that Microsoft has in Office 365. This is just a quick look before we go through to the tool itself, just so you understand how it's organized. For your organization, you can have as many teams as you want. Each team has a set of channels, and each channel is like a focus area. It can be some aspect of a project or a project itself, but perhaps, and it really does depend how you want to organize things, the team may be a project team, and the channel may be this work stream of the project, another channel, another work stream of the project. Bottom line is, however you want to organize things, you get multiple teams. Within each team, you get multiple channels. And each channel consists of conversations, files, notes, tabs, connectors, and whatever you're connecting into it. So your team, you can segregate the different areas that the team wants to focus on, wants to work on, and each of those areas has a set of tools for collaboration. Let's take a look at Microsoft Teams. And I am just going to skip across here. Okay, what you have here is the web version of Microsoft Teams. It's almost the same and almost as functional as what's in the client version, but you can download the client, and that's what we're going to be working in today. This is actually a downloaded piece of software. I'd recommend you use that. Sometimes the web version can be a little harder to use, as they typically are, but this is the downloaded version. You can get to that from your Office 365 menu. You can download that from the web version of Teams. There's a couple different ways you can get the client app to install, but it's very simple, very straightforward. And what you'll have here, let me just walk you through Teams in the next 10 minutes or so here. On the far left side, these tabs here, the ones that we're going to the one we're really going to zero in on is called Teams, but I've got Chat. You can think again about this as the replacement for Skype for Business. That's where I can do a lot of that chatting. Teams, we'll be digging into one of these in a moment. Meetings, it kind of mirrors Outlook, and I can do my meeting scheduling from inside of meetings with a couple of added bonuses that take advantage of the fact that this is a team collaboration environment. Files, this is everything I have on OneDrive. In fact, everything that I've touched recently across everything in Office 365. And at the very top is the Activity Hub. The Activity Hub tells me, it'll tell me if somebody has mentioned me in a post, if somebody has sent me something, if I've got a response to anything. I'll get a little alert like you see with the chat. Somebody's started a chat with me. You'll see the same kind of thing going up under Activity. So that's the left side there. We'll talk about the top in a little bit, but what I want to do is I want to dig straight into Teams. You can see here that I've got 5 teams that I've marked as favorites. I got a bunch more teams than that. And if I go into any of those, here's Teams Demo, I've got this set of channels beneath it. Creating a team, by the way, if you were starting back there, you can click Create Team. You give it a team name, and you can say, I want to use an existing team as a template. So unlike Planner, which doesn't have this yet, I can base this on an existing team, and I can also base it on an existing Office 365 group. So if we rewind about 20 minutes, and I mentioned how groups underlies all of this, and that you can create a group from any of these tools. I might have created one when I created the Planner board. That created an Office 365 group. I want to use that group. I don't want to create another group. These two, it's the same group using both tools to collaborate on the same set of things. So yes, I want to pick from an existing group, and that's how I can do that here. So once my team is created, I want to add members to the team. Very simple. Again, they've really simplified the whole process here, and so I can just start typing people's names and add folks to the team. I already have one of these teams created. Like any good cooking show, I've had one in the oven for a little while, so we're going to take a look at this one. I mentioned channels. So beneath each team are the channels. Every team that you create will come with a channel called General. At first, that channel is empty, but if I go there, I can see that there's conversation that's going on. There are other things that I can do inside of that channel, but in addition to channel, I've created General, I've created a channel called Information Security. I've created another one called Surveys. You can have as many channels as you need here. Obviously, at some point, you're probably talking about creating another team, just for the sake of keeping track of everything. But creating a channel is pretty simple. Just add channel. Channel. I can put a description in there. I can say for everybody, I want this to show as a favorite. Everybody that's on the team, I want them to be aware of this channel, and here it is. There's no conversation happened in this channel yet, but now I've got a whole new area where conversation around a particular topic or focus area can take place, where collaboration, not just conversations, but collaboration on files within the wiki and other areas that I can share with other folks. That's going to happen in this channel. So again, your organization can have multiple teams, and each team can have multiple channels to organize the different work streams or focus areas within that team. Across the top here, these tabs, the first one is Conversations. We'll just step through these quickly so you have some sense of what goes on inside of a team. So at the bottom...
Hey, Alan, there was a quick question. There's actually two questions now in the chat.
Perfect, yeah.
The first was, could you describe the process of adding and managing, controlling an external person to the team? And the other was, do you know if Outlook will eventually be added to the left navigation?
Yeah, so the short answer to external people is it's the same. You just put in their email address. It's not going to be your domain name. It's going to be, Joe Blow at marketingcompany.com. And that'll trigger an invite being sent to that person. If they are an Office 365 subscriber, it's about as easy as it gets. If they are not, and that's the domain name that they're using is, there's no Microsoft Office 365 for that domain. In other words, they haven't purchased any licenses for it. Then they can access by setting up a Microsoft Live account. Not complicated, but those instructions will be in the login screen when they try to access. So yeah, external access, very simple. Just add them like anybody else, and it will send an invite to them like it would anybody else. But again, because they're outside your domain, their access, that they can only do so much when they get in. And that second question, do we know if Outlook will eventually be added to the left navigation? That's a great question. I don't know if that's the goal of the team, to replace email or to bring Outlook in here and do away with that client. I don't think that's the goal. However, as we'll see as we go through this, this actually could replace some of your email use cases. You may not use email as much if you use Teams well, and I think that's good news. I think you can cut down on the email clutter. But will Outlook be incorporated in here? They bought in the calendar. They did do that, but I think the goal here is not to replace email, but probably to reduce the amount of email that's going on. But a good question. And if anybody knows differently, please go ahead and type into that conversation window, because that would be interesting. All right, good questions. Let's take a look at this conversation then. So I'm just going to start a conversation, and there you go. The next person that comes in and replies to it. All right, we all know how threaded conversations work. Very simple, very straightforward. Let's talk about a couple of ways in which this gets a bit more interesting. First of all, that's just plain text. I do have the option down here of starting something with rich text. That and okay, ignoring the typos, etc. for a moment. So I can say here that I can bold this stuff. I've got full control over how this appears. I can insert links and so on, so that, oops, when I add this stuff, do it that way, it shows up with the formatted text. Of course, what everybody's most excited about are these emojis, obviously. The fact that we can now put an animated penguin into a post. Welcome to the 21st century. Also, if those are too 20th century for you, then you can use these guys here and insert them. So, enough said. So, texting, rich texting, and then this thing called mentions. Mentions are very important inside of a team collaboration environment. Because a lot of conversation goes on, people don't know about it, they don't realize that that conversation was relevant to them. How do I email a link to this conversation so the person can find it? Well, you don't have to do that. All I have to do is be able to say, what does, and I can start typing somebody's name, what does Kevin think about? What'll happen now, of course, is Kevin, who's running Teams, is going to probably hear a little beep, and in his activity center, he's going to see a little indicator. And when he goes there, he's going to see that, oh, Alan mentioned me in this, click here, and it's going to take him through to it. And then Kevin can come in, reply to this thing. He can give it a thumbs up, he can do whatever he needs to do in response to that. So mentions are very, very important, because otherwise we just got a lot of content that people don't realize is relevant to them. Now, you can still search for it and find it, but in the context of a team that's working, whether they're in the same office, whether they're spread around the world, this is near real-time communication. In fact, it can be real-time, obviously, because it's chat, but folks across the team know it's going on and that it's relevant to them because of this @mention functionality. So that's actually a surprisingly powerful thing for such a small @ sign. There you go. There's Kevin replying back, and I assume that means he's doing okay. So we've got let's see, just time check here. We'll skip over a couple things. Something that's very important about this is that I can direct conversations that would typically be happening in email to Teams. So for example, if I come in and I say, whoops, I want to do this on a channel basis. I want to say this new channel here, give me the email address for this channel. If I copy this URL and I pop it into an email, I can forward an existing email or put this in maybe the carbon copy of a new email, and that email will end up in here. So there's a couple of obvious use cases for that. The first one is I'm emailing somebody outside the team, maybe it's a customer, and I want to keep track of the emails that are going out. So I put it in the CC, I put the channel's email address in the CC, and it will show up in here. Now the rest of the team knows what's being communicated. And if the customer replies to all, their reply will also come into here as well. But we can now discuss that email. We can, in the second use case, it was just for the team. Probably should have just used Teams for that. But now that email is in the Teams context, and I don't need to keep generating emails to keep track of what's going on. Now it's a conversation inside of Teams. So that's actually, when I said earlier about cutting down an email, just that little trick there of grabbing the channel's email address, popping that into your next email that you send out, will redirect a good deal of collaboration away from email and into the context of a team, and specifically into the relevant channel of that team. And that, to me, seems like a really good idea. So will Outlook be, back to Ashley's question, will Outlook eventually be added? Well, email is being moved over, no question about that. But that is depending on how we use the tool. All right, speeding along, watching the clock here. Files, you guys are all familiar with files. You probably use SharePoint. You can drag and drop files in here. I've got an example of some of that in this channel, this information security channel. Here's some files. And I can just deal with the files in here, or if it's getting big, if I got a lot of files, I can open that in SharePoint and it'll pop open my SharePoint Online site. When I create an Office 365 group, whether I'm doing that by creating a planner or by creating a team, it also creates this SharePoint Online site collection for me. And it puts a site in that site collection, it puts a document library in that site. And so anything that I add, whether I'm doing it through Planner, whether I'm doing it through Teams, or any of the Office 365 tools, for that group, all files I'm uploading are actually going into SharePoint. And sometimes I need the full power of SharePoint. A lot of times I don't, and I can just edit my files, not just view them, not just download them, but actually edit them straight from here. If I want to, I can edit here in Teams. I can edit in Word Online. I can edit in Word, the desktop client itself. When I do edit a document, I can also discuss the document. And so as this pops up here, oh, I uploaded a bad one. I can start this conversation. Let me just back out of this here. And grab this guy instead. Okay, so I can have a conversation around this document, and as I have this conversation, other people can participate, but it also shows back in the conversation area. If I've been having a conversation about a file, it shows up in the conversations area, and I can continue that conversation here without having to open the file. But the file is here. I can edit it from here as well. So you can see the seamless integration between files and conversation, all the collaboration that needs to happen around documents. That all happens here. Wiki, it's essentially a SharePoint wiki. I can come in here and add pages and share those pages with the rest of the team. And then beyond that, I've got the ability to add additional tabs. I've added one called Poly. I've added one called Power BI. You can add from all of these apps, basically anything that has a connector that'll interact with Teams, and this is a growing number. I can bring in content from other cloud services, whether they're in Office 365 or otherwise. You can see one of those is Planner. I think I actually did that for, yeah, this one I added it and I called it Tasks. And it's my planner board. I don't actually need to go to Microsoft Planner to see what's going on in my planner. I can do all of that within Teams. So I've got email moving to Teams. I've got Planner in Teams. I've got meetings and chat in Teams. This is why I said earlier, Teams is becoming the desktop for collaboration, essentially. There are some fun things you can do that are pretty interesting. I added Poly here. Poly is an app that you can basically add a up to 5 options. It's very simple. And it will ask the team, basically it's a very quick poll, a very quick survey. And as folks come in and give their answers, I'll be able to come over to Polly at the top here, and I'll be able to see how many polls have been created, what the answers to the polls were, and that sort of thing. So a lot of things that you can add into Teams. Some of them will be useful to you, some of them you'll scratch your head and wonder why. But most importantly, perhaps, is other cloud services that you're using inside or outside of the Office 365 stack, and the ability to bring that information directly into the team. Whether that's, I'm actually using Trello. I don't want to use Planner. Okay, well, you can bring Trello in here. My team is working in Visual Studio. Great. You can surface all the Visual Studio stuff inside of your teams. So that gives you a lot of ability to add outside of in his Power BI. Gives you the ability to add in all kinds of workspaces into your teams. The other part here to mention, just last thing I'll mention here, is the shortcuts. Lots of clever ways of getting to things very, very quickly within your team. And I didn't mention meetings, but within a channel, I can start a meeting. I can say I want to meet right now and start this up. And anybody who's in this team will be able to see, oh look, a meeting has started, join now. And it could be in progress for 10 minutes, but they're part of this team. They go back to their desk, they see that Alan and Bruce and Kevin are chatting about this stuff, and they can just hop on the meeting. I can record that meeting as it's going on. And what'll happen, and this is really cool stuff, is the recording of the meeting isn't added to some mysterious location up in Stream that is unrelated to this team. That recording will actually get put straight into this channel. And I did one of those earlier. I'm not sure if it's still here. Yeah, it'll just there it is. There's a meeting that Kevin and I had earlier. It was just audio. It recorded it. It put it here. It transcribed it. So I can come back in and say, oh, Alan and Kevin talked about this one thing earlier, and the whole thing's recorded right there. Persistence. So long and the short of it is, Teams changes a lot of things. Office 365 in general changes a lot of things for how teams work. That means change management is a huge deal. Your rollout within an organization needs to be thought through very carefully. We can help you with that. We've got templates and an experience in helping other organizations do that. So by all means, you can reach out to me after this. I did notice one or two other questions come across the way, and I'll try and follow up with you folks individually. But because it's change, what we can't do is just drop it on teams in our organizations and say, have fun, go use it. We expect you to be more productive now. The change management's a big part of this, and helping them learn how to use that. Microsoft's got some great materials available for that. We leverage some of that ourselves, plus our own stuff, and we'll be happy to help you connect with those resources, as well as anything else in the Office 365 stack that we can help you with. That said, I'm looking at my clock, and it says I still got somewhere between 0 and 60 seconds left. One question: how easy is it to delete the file from Teams due to GDPR requirement? Great question for our SharePoint architects, because that's what we're really talking about there. It really is how you want to configure SharePoint, and we can help you understand the capabilities of SharePoint around GDPR. Bob had a question about the value proposition of Teams. Doesn't look like it has integrated Planner. It is limited value compared to SharePoint for files, and so on and so forth. There is a lot of questions in there, Bob. departments or teams trying to solve the group SharePoint. In short, your last part of your question, Bob, what I would say is a good starting point for that discussion is that all of those different tools that you can use to collaborate with, whether that's email or SharePoint or meetings that you have, all happening in different areas. There's no place where it's collected, where it's shared, where if this is relevant to a team, where they have access to it. Teams in particular brings all of those things into one place, provides the persistence of information that you can't get anywhere else. That's what I would say is the goal that the Microsoft development team has been shooting for around this. Not necessarily that Planner is the best planning tool on the planet, but the way that it integrates into the rest of them, the way that you share that content with your team and can do that with teams is probably its real benefit. And are there, Olia? Let's see. Oh, thank you, Olia, for putting that there. Yeah, I feel like I'm shortchanging you a bit on the answer, Bob. It's probably a better discussion to have, and we'll have a conversation at some point about that. If there's no other questions, we're at our time. Is anybody closing this thing out, or am I just bidding everybody farewell?
Perfect, Alan. This is Vijay. Well, thank you so much. Excellent presentation, and thanks everyone for joining in. In case you need more details and how it can address your specific needs, again, like I said, feel free to reach out to me, your dedicated account manager, and to Covenant team, and we'll be happy to address. We'll appreciate all joining in and have a great afternoon.